Okay, so first things first, we need some paint. So when you put your paint out, you really just want to put it around the perimeter of the palette. And you don't want to overkill it. You don't need a whole lot since this is a small painting. So you want to put the paint around the perimeter. This will come into play more when you have a lot of colors. And leave the middle open for mixing. So we've got paint, and then we need turpentine. 2 jars. My suggestion is when you pour this, to not pour it like this. I find that when I do that, it has a tendency to run down, drip off. It doesn't do that so much this way. You pour it from the side. And you don't need a whole lot, just a little bit in each jar. So you're going to have 1 jar basically that stays relatively clean, and that's for just thinning the paint as you go. And then as you go, you want to kind of keep your brushes clean, so this one will be more for dirty. So you swish your brush around in there and clean that off. Okay, I'm going to start with 2 brushes, 2 flats. These would be from your set of blue brushes, mainly because this one, it's about the biggest brush you've got. So you like to start with bigger brushes and then work down to smaller ones, because generally with a block in, what we're doing is we're trying to cover a lot of area and just get the canvas covered. So a big brush is good for that. Now I'm using 2 brushes because I'm going to use one that's more for darks and the other one for lights. So this one, since the background's almost black, this is going to be for darks, and this one will be for lights. So when you go to mix colors, you're going to notice that individual colors of paint have their own what's called tinting strength, which means when you mix them, it's how strong that color is in that mixture. And you're really going to find out with black and white here that black is a whole lot stronger than white. So if you're trying to get a middle gray, you don't want to mix equal parts of black with equal part of white. You're going to get a dark gray because the black is so overpowering. So what we're going to do, I'm going to be starting with the background, which is pretty dark, but I don't want to make it completely black. So I'm going to add just a little bit of white to it. And then I'm just barely dipping the tip of the brush into the turpentine. I barely touched it, just to thin it out some. Just a tiny bit at a time. Okay. Alright, so I'm working with thinned out black paint, a large brush, and all I want to do is I'm just going to get the background covered up. A couple reasons for that. People have a tendency to kind of ignore the background, but what you'll see is that the background really strongly influences the object itself. So in this case, it's really going to make this feel super bright. So the background's really important. You never want to just leave that as an afterthought. So I'm just kind of lightly scrubbing this on. It's really thin. And you don't have to be perfectly accurate with the edges. Since this is a block in, it's just meant to be kind of loose. We're just working in generalities. That's sort of the goal here, is to work from the general to the specific, always in painting, and even drawing and other forms of art. Work from general to specific. So we're just working with the bigger shapes here. Alright, so I'm going to change my tune a little bit here. I think I'm still going to use my big brush to do some of this. Now it's contaminated with black, so I'm going to use a rag, which I suggest you have a rag. If not paper towels, rag's probably better. So I'm going to wipe that off, and then I'm going to clean this out in my dirty turpentine. Just to get most of it off. Obviously there's still some on it. Now I'm just going to add some thinned out white paint, and obviously it's going to gray out a bit with this. So to do all this, just to fill it in, cover up the white of the canvas. So this will look a bit grayish, which is good. And of course there are all kinds of variations within this, but I'm not going to worry about that. I just want to get one big shape here and just sort of fill it in. So the sooner we get all the white of the canvas covered, the sooner we can see how the painting is starting to work in terms of the structure of the light and dark. Added just a hint of a little bit of gray in here in the back because it falls into shadow more. Okay. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and tackle the top of the box, because that's kind of a light middle gray, so it's a little darker than this. So I'm going to add just a touch of dark to this. And it's too dark. So again, you don't have to get this perfect. It's just an estimation, because as the painting develops, we can make these changes. All right. See, I already went over there. No big deal. And now this is the darker side, so I'm going to create quite a bit of contrast here. I might even go too dark here just to get the effect of that contrast. You can never underestimate how dark that should be. That's definitely too dark. Lighten it a little bit. All right. Again, absolute perfection with edges and drawing isn't necessary at this point. We're just getting the underlying structure, or what I like to call the skeleton of the thing. And part of that underlying structure is that there's a really strong contrast right here. That's vitally important. All right, so then this shadow is basically close to the same value. Maybe not quite that dark. Again, it doesn't have to be spot on, because we can change this as we go. Blending and all that stuff, that can come later. This is just a rough estimation. So that's mostly it, really. Now if I were going to develop this, well, one thing is I'd fix that. Maybe I'll do that now. Just try to bring this a little closer here to where it needs to be. I ended up using the same brush for the whole thing. It's okay. And then with a smaller brush, really, I could come in and create a little shadow edge here, cast shadow. When you do that, it gives the object some weight. It feels like it's really sitting, like it's anchored to the surface. So that's kind of it. I might darken that slightly. Again, this is just all block in, simple. I'm going a little beyond what I need to do for block in, but decided to go a little darker with that. You'll notice a lot of times when you look at a cube or something, the shadow side, it always looks like it's a lot darker right here by the light edge. Mainly it's an optical thing because of the strong contrast. It's not necessarily a darker value here than it is here. It's just optical. All right, so that's about it. That's a real simple kind of block in a cube. The main thing is to get the drawing about right, get everything covered, get your composition, and get that feeling of illumination in the painting.